April 2nd came and went, and no new Fire Emblem, no teaser, just silence and some really expensive games. Now, listen, I am just as disappointed as you. Everything seemed to have been lining up, but I want to talk about some things surrounding this and why this is a good thing. We're going to talk about timing, the momentum this franchise has had, how Nintendo is measuring its success, and some possible schedules down the line. Stick with me. I want to know in the comments, though, how do you feel about where Fire Emblem is going right now?
Late for the ceremony.
So, let's be real. The timing made sense. It's Fire Emblem's 35th anniversary this month. We normally average about 1.9 years between release, and we're past that with Engage. The Direct was the perfect time to announce this. I even had a tinfoil hat theory with the Fire Emblem Heroes trailer that night that was, of course, going to be a Faye channel celebrating the new game. Anyway, if you follow Fire Emblem release patterns, it really felt like that was it. But we got nothing. And I started looking back at different patterns. When this franchise began, it was very much an end-of-life cycle type of game. Thracia 76 came out 3 years after the N64 launched. We had Path of Radiance, which was one of the last major titles on the GameCube. Echoes was a beautiful remake released on a dying 3DS. Nintendo uses this franchise in very specific moments, and that has changed as we've gone on. In the past, this has absolutely been an end-of-console life type of game, but we're evolving, and I want to take a look at that. When I try to make sense of things, I chart them because I'm a very visual person. What we're looking here is a measure of momentum. How much are each of these games adding to the franchise, and what are they doing with their opportunities? Games added late in a console's life are naturally not going to perform as well as games that have every opportunity when they're early on and you have lots of momentum, and folks aren't just done with a console. This is an important thing to look at when you're looking at how well a franchise is doing. But I want to zoom in because this is a lot, and I want to simplify this just a little bit. Now, what I've done here with this nice little line here is a bit of a linear curve fit, and basically said anything above it is adding to the franchise and anything below it is not. And I want to break this out by quadrant. When you have games that don't get much of a chance, and we're talking about Thracia 76 and Gaiden and Echoes, these games, it's hard to succeed in that area. It just is. I don't believe these subtracted anything from the franchise with what they were given. You will notice, though, there are no late life releases that do very well, which proves out the point we're talking about. When we start looking at the bottom right, we start looking at games that have hurt the franchise and momentum in some way. Now, FE1 and Path of Radiance are a different case, and I want to look at them a little differently in a bit. So just hold your thoughts on those, but according to this chart, they are very much status quo. But New Mystery, to a lesser extent Engage, Shadow Dragon, and especially Radiant Dawn. And when you zoom in on Shadow Dragon and Radiant Dawn, these are games that... Well, this was a hard time for Fire Emblem, just to be frank. Many folks have said Radiant Dawn almost killed the franchise, and if you look at that, that actually goes right underneath my head. And when given that big of an opportunity and you miss, it is tough. The thing I want you to focus on is when we're talking about this top right quadrant and how many of the recent games we have here. Obviously, the GBA area was very good for the franchise, and I think handhelds was something that made Fire Emblem take off. It was fantastic. But if you look at games like Mystery of the Emblem, this is a game that really put this franchise on the map. It told folks that this was something to pay attention to. Yes, it was a small release, but that's a lot of acceleration. Blazing Blade is the same way. Given the games around it, it did so incredibly well and basically told Nintendo that this was ready for a wide release. But then you start looking at different things like Awakening, and that's when this franchise had its opportunities and took it. Awakening legendarily saved the franchise, and you can see why. Fates actually did better, but if you look at it in terms of how well it did with the games around it, it only improved the franchise slightly. And then Three Houses just absolutely took off. The big thing I want you to pay attention to is the way the shift is going. These games in the top right quadrant were signals. These were paradigm shifts for the franchise. We are in a period where Nintendo is paying a lot of attention to how this is going. They're no longer releasing on dying consoles, and even when you look at remakes, which generally don't do as well, and I am considering Engage a remake for the purposes of this franchise is growing, but I want to look at this a different way.
Watch this!
So we just talked about momentum and how Fire Emblem has taken advantage of the opportunities given them. And that's a fantastic deal, but the question is, what else is Nintendo looking at? Because they absolutely look at how well you've improved game over game. This is a big deal to them. Another metric that they care a lot about is attach rate, and this is the number of games sold per console sold at that moment. Basically, what percentage of your audience is latching on to this game? It's a big deal. I want to just look at what the standard strategy game on the Switch looks like right now. So we start off with Advanced Wars at about 0.4% there. That is fairly low. Anything under 1% is not fantastic. That means not as many people latched onto them. You move on to Pikmin and Xenoblade and Octopath, and you can see a clear increase in there. Once you start getting into the 3 and 4%, I mean, Octopath Traveler did very well and was an excellent game. But looking at how Three Houses did for the number of consoles that were released at the time, 4.5% is incredible for a strategy game right now. There's really no comparison for that with the Switch right now. And so I threw up Minecraft, which is at 5%. But that's what we're talking about. It's important to note that we haven't hit the realm of Zelda or Pokemon or Mario. Those are in the 20 to 40 range, which is astounding. The big point of this is that right now Fire Emblem is the strategy RPG game for the Switch. Let's look at some other games though and how it's done in the past, and we'll get a better picture of how everything is being put together. Now, we need to make a clear divide here with the Japanese only games, and that is Binding Blade and before, but the big thing I want you to take away from that is it's very clear why they were so excited to release this to the West. That is an astounding level of attach rate at 8.5 and 8.4%, which would obviously be up and through the roof of this chart. You get a little better idea of how the franchise does with this though. The GBA games did well and they introduced this franchise to us all, but really when we're starting to see things pick up is these more recent games with Awakening, Fates, Three Houses, even when we talk about Shadows of Valencia and Engage. For the kind of titles they were, this is fairly solid. These are numbers that makes Nintendo pay attention. So why no Fire Emblem yet? I don't think I have to tell you guys, but this is a budding IP. This is something that has all the makings of a moneymaker for them down the line, and it already has made them quite a bit. And I believe they really want to take their time with this and get it right. That is a huge amount of momentum to take advantage of, and this next game really needs to hit. This franchise has a lot of momentum, and I believe they want it to have its own moment. We even got a Path of Radiance port, which I think is a fantastic sign, something to hold us over for just a little bit longer. But speaking of that, we have some new merch done by Sindy Salem, who is an amazing artist. This is honestly one of my favorite shirts right now. The detail is amazing. They are new to the Fire Emblem art community, and I would love it if you guys could go give them a hi. I have their Ko-fi linked down below, and of course, head to the FEHology Store for that merch.
That feeling has been building for a long time.
Fire Emblem is a major IP now. It's in Smash. I mean, Smash introduced Marth and Roy to the world. How many people played Blazing Blade just because they saw that game? But now it's a $1.3 billion mobile game. It's selling millions, and Nintendo has been watching this growth closely, because when a series goes from quiet legacy title to major IP, that means something. But what we need is a proper release schedule. Now, what we're about to go into is some serious speculation on my part, but I want you to stick with me. This is the schedule that we have right now, pending whatever nonsense Nintendo is going on. We will have a Nintendo Switch released soon. We've already had the announcement. We have the Direct. It is currently scheduled for June 5th to be released. The thing I want you to pay attention to is these holiday bundles. This is the first window where we could really see a game, and I want to talk about what a release schedule would look like for that. Now, as we discussed, this is all speculation here, but what I want to see from this is an actual teaser trailer. We need hype around this thing, and I think with the way the momentum has been going, that is going to be a big deal for Nintendo. Be watching for that and understand that's a great sign if we see a teaser and then a full reveal followed by it being released in one of these bundles, and then of course the DLC roadmap coming. I can see this starting from anytime as early as October all the way going into January in the beginning of the year, but I think they are going to want to release this soon. Remember, whenever you switch consoles, you have to completely regain your fan base. You have to convince a ton of people to spend their money on a console that they do not have yet. And the way they do that is by taking up-and-coming titles and putting them out in front of people. If you take nothing away from this video, understand this is absolutely an up-and-coming title, and this is why I think the release is going to happen sooner rather than later.
Have you something to ask me?
The next Fire Emblem is not going to be an afterthought. We are no longer getting released on consoles that are 3 years post-mortem. Whether this is a genealogy remake or something entirely new, this is going to be built for the Switch 2. This is going to have better visuals, smarter systems, a bigger launch window, and it's not going to be rushed because Nintendo needs this to land. So yeah, we did not get a launch title, but I want you to look at this as a good thing. Fire Emblem deserves more. Not a filler slot, not a last-gen port, but a full spotlight. So where is it? It's coming, and it's going to hit louder than Sharena when you open Fire Emblem Heroes in a quiet room full of people. I've got a whole other video on what I think this next Fire Emblem is going to be. Go check that out. Members, you are amazing. Thank you for all that you do. Take care and schedule an appointment with your FEHologist real soon.